Hi, welcome to this week's Energy Series. We are Peyton, Corey, and myself, Yaila. And this week we are talking about inner work. What is it? How do you do it? And why is it even useful? So, Corey, let's start with you. What would you like to start with inner work?
Oh, thank you, ladies. I really appreciate that. I always love being here with you all. So, inner work. Gosh, we talk about inner work a lot, and yet it's like, what is it? So inner work is, and it's interesting because I was just having this discussion with somebody, one of my clients last night, and inner work is when you go into the depths of your soul and you bring up all those, the deepest wounds, traumas, fears. You bring them up so that you can take a look at them and love them and clear them or release them. We say clear, we say release. And, but it's the inner work is really necessary because we run on our subconscious minds. Our subconscious minds runs the show. And if we don't bring those fears, traumas, wounds into the forefront of our consciousness, they will run the show. So inner work is about bringing those subconscious programmings that we have and taking a look at them and loving them and healing them. And you can also call this, there are some people who do like the dark night of the soul, where suddenly they do have a trauma or um, anxiety so heightened or, fear exaggerated, where they're forced to do the inner work just to survive. Why do we do the inner work? We do the inner work so that we can shine our light for others and help them heal. It also is because we're put on this earth to evolve. And we signed up for certain lessons to learn on this earth plane. And in order to do that evolving, it requires inner work. Is it easy? No. Is it worth it? Definitely. So I've had different periods of time in my own life, and I work with a lot of my clients have trauma, and their lives become absolutely unbearable. And for me, I was going through a divorce, and I had a lot of anxiety. It wasn't even in my body. And even though I'd done a lot of work by then, inner work comes in stages. Inner work comes when we are able to heal it. And when it pops up, it means it's time to heal it. So I have a lot of uh, clients that are traumatized, and I too had some major anxiety. And it wasn't until I did another layer, call it the layer of the onions, of that inner work, that I could walk about the world free. Because everywhere I turned, PTSD, you know, I jump at at a drop of a hat. Everything, my nerves were just rattled. And that inner work allows us to heal those wounds, the traumas, the fears. And in order to evolve, we have to do the inner work. And nobody can do it for you because we all sign up for our own soul's journey, our own path, the lessons we wanted to learn when we came down here to this earth plane. And so that's why inner work can only be done by you. Yes, you can find other people who are like-minded doing the same inner work, like in a class setting. that was so helpful for me to be in a class setting and to do a lot of healing, a lot of energy work, and looking within, because nobody can say what you signed up to learn. And that's why it's important for us all to do our inner work to help this, and eventually the whole planet and the whole collective to evolve. Because we didn't come here to just sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais all day. Yes. Have we had periods like that? Yeah. But we come here to learn. So the inner work is required on the spiritual path. It's not for pansies. It takes a lot of courage. But in doing the inner work, we find that we gain knowledge and we gain wisdom. And ultimately, we find our inner strength and our inner light and our inner truth. So inner work is really important. I'm glad that we're doing this video today on inner work, because I've had a lot of clients come to me lately, afraid to do the inner work or not understanding the inner work. And I mean, when somebody told me about inner work and, you got to do it, I was like, I wish I could have had somebody take care of it for me. And as a clairvoyant, yes, we do a lot of healings and helping for people. But ultimately, the inner work is just that. It's on the inside. And as energy workers, we're all energy workers here and channelers, clairvoyants, blah, blah, blah. The big, big difference for myself, and I've noticed with my clients and students, is taking the energetic charge out of the physical body. That was a big chunk that was missing for me in my inner work. Did I know that? No. But I was guided to do that, and I was open-minded. And so it was a big, huge chunk that needed to be cleared. Even after I did that inner work, was because our bodies, everything's energy. And when we have traumas, fears, all that subconscious stuff, our bodies don't know any different. And so it will hold on to that charge. And that's why it might come up again and again and again. And so the inner work is never done. Is there periods where it's a little easier? Yeah. Because when you dive deep and go into those real inner layers and heal them, the other layers aren't as bad as diving really deep. And so there's lots of ways to do the inner work. But I have found that on the spiritual journey, it's so important. It's really important because you get to own your own sovereignty. And I equate it now, I'm with this, but I equate inner work to, like a suitcase. So you go about life, you've got your suitcase and you get some fear and you stick it in the suitcase. And then you still go about your life and you get a little, trauma. You stick it in your suitcase and you're carrying it along and you pick up a little more and you pick up a little more. And pretty soon that suitcase gets really heavy. It becomes a burden to carry. And your shoulder starts to hurt, and your legs are tired. And inner work is like unpacking that suitcase. You bring it up, you look at it, you go, no, you unpack that suitcase, making that suitcase lighter to carry, equate it to the physical body, lighter to carry. And so therefore there's much more room to adventure and explore and actually live your life without such a heavy suitcase to carry. So that's what I've got on inner work. How about you, Peyton?
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, that was a great introduction. I really resonated with a lot of what you said. And I think you're completely right on that this is a huge topic and something that is going to probably look a little different for each of us. So when I think of inner work, I think of kind of that broad umbrella bag of anything we do to improve ourselves. So if we are healing our body or healing our life or trying to change our life, make changes, as people who are on our spiritual path, we know that the way that we do that is by raising our vibration. So I tend to think of inner work as any practice that we do. And again, there's countless ways to go about inner work, and everyone will find a technique that feels good to them, that resonates with them. But for me, in general, when we're talking about inner work, it's something that we're doing that raises our frequency. Because, of course, we know as light workers and starseeds, that's how we change anything. And generally, I think when we're doing inner work, most of us are wanting to make a change in our life, whether to feel better in our bodies, to create something in our life, or maybe to get rid of something in our life. So I think that this is kind of that broad category of things we do to work on ourselves. And I think there is, though, one thing that I learned on my path. There is one really important thing to understand about inner work. And this is something that can trip up a lot of people. And that is understanding the difference between education and inner work. And what I mean by that is when I was first starting out on my spiritual path, when I had my awakening, I started to listen to spiritual teachers, right? I had this one teacher that I was obsessed with, and I listened to her recordings like every waking minute. I always had, my headphones on, listening to everything that I could find. I was absorbing everything like a sponge and just lived this new information. And it felt so good. It felt like my truth. But after a couple years of feeling like I was really working on myself, really doing the hard work, I noticed nothing in my life was changing. And so what I discovered as I started to work with the Pleiadians is there's a difference between educating ourselves and actually doing inner work. Because education, of course, is very important, huge part of our spiritual journey. But to me, inner work is when we're actually moving the energy, when we are actually shifting our vibration. Because what I noticed in my journey is I spend a lot of time gathering information, but that doesn't necessarily shift our vibration. And so I find that a lot of my clients and students who have been on their spiritual path for a while and really feel like they're doing the work, they're putting in the time, but they're not seeing results, tend to be falling into this trap of sometimes we confuse learning and education with doing the inner work. And I know I made that mistake, and the guides have, explained it to me. The Pleiadians like to say, knowledge only gets you so far. Then you have to actually apply it. And so for me, what I have learned after doing this the hard way and the wrong way for a lot of years is that it's really important with our inner work to be putting it into practice, into application, to be taking some sort of action in our lives to actually move the energy. Because again, as we all know, being on our spiritual path, if you're not shifting the vibration, nothing is changing. And of course, we're doing inner work to change our lives in some way. That's typically why we do it, right? We want to improve something. And so this is one of those big things that for me is kind of the key concept behind inner work, is that you're putting it into practice. And so if you are someone who's been doing the work for a while, maybe you're not seeing much in the way of results, this is a great thing to look at. Are you just gathering very valuable education? And of course, that's a huge part of our journey. or are you actually moving the energy? So for me, it's all about, is your practice, whatever you're gravitating towards, and we all have some favorites that we go to as our go-to practices of inner work. Maybe it's shadow work. That's always a favorite. Maybe it's just something simple like meditation. Are you actually taking action to apply this in your life? If not, you may be falling into the trap of just learning as opposed to shifting the energy, which is what helps you, make that change that you want to see in your life. So for me, it's all about just asking yourself, for whatever that inner work tool is that you're using, is there a mechanism in that tool that is actually based on action? Are you actually putting it into practice somehow? Because I find that that is kind of the heart and soul of inner work, and why so many of our favorite techniques that we tend to point to when we talk about inner work, say shadow work, has that built into it, that you are actually doing a set process to move the energy. Because as long as you're moving energy, you're probably raising your vibration. That's what these tools are meant to do. So for me, that's kind of what comes up for me with inner work, is that the key to it is the action or the application. Because if we're just sitting there listening to videos, listening to people speak, that's wonderful. I love that. I do that all the time. It's not necessarily shifting the energy. And as the Pleiadians like to say, if you're not moving the energy, you're not moving your life. So this is something that, it's good for us to just kind of understand that it's part of, I think, kind of one of the main facets of inner work is that it has an action component. So that's kind of what comes to my mind when I think about inner work and how I define it. And of course, there are tons of great ways to do your inner work. And some of the ones that we have done videos on that you can check out are shadow work. That is a great tool for inner work. We talk about energy protection tools. Again, they are going to help you raise your vibration. Even something simple like meditation, because again, you're applying it, you're doing something with it. So for me, that's kind of how I have learned to look at inner work, having maybe not done it the right way in the early days. So how about you, Yaila? What comes up for you when we talk about inner work?
Thank you, ladies. I love how you both shared your connection to inner work and what it means for you, and just some great examples on how to do it. When I think of inner work, it's really, for me, bringing conscious what's in our subconscious or unconscious. So it's bringing to the forefront. I love how, Corey, you were saying, what's running the show, right? The more we learn about just our behaviors and how we're showing up in our life, and obviously our thoughts, our beliefs impact our overall health. It impacts our relationships. It impacts everything in our life. And so the inner work for me is really different modalities and different ways to become conscious to what's been in our subconscious running the show. There's many beliefs and there's many ways of operating that either were programmed, we interpret it a certain way, we created a story around it. And so, when you're a little kid, you don't understand the big picture, your stories can be pretty skewed. And so as an adult operating from those old stories, from that child's perspective, that child's mind, not fully understanding the different layers of what it is to be an adult and functioning, in the world, you can really be running on some major default energies and beliefs that you're not even aware of. So for me, the inner work has been connecting to what's underneath. And throughout my journey of inner work can show up in, like the ladies were saying, many different ways. And Peyton, I loved how you're bringing up, the difference between just learning information and actually putting things into practice. Because from my health coaching background, there's stages of change, right? There's not even knowing that you want to make a shift in a certain area, and then you're contemplating it, and then maybe you're starting to create a plan, and then you actually start taking steps to it, and then you're learning how to make that a full-time practice. And so when you're learning about one, you may not even realize certain things you want to change, but you're just noticing patterns in your life. That's kind of how it started for me. There's certain things that kept showing up, you know, same person, or I'm sorry, different person, same scenario, or just falling into similar patterns. And I was like, okay, I am the common denominator here. The only thing consistent here is me, but I keep falling into these similar patterns. What's going on? And there's so many layers to go about inner work. My journey started more on the physical level. I taking like yoga classes or Pilates, when you're starting to get in tune with your body and what works for it, sometimes that's someone's initial introduction. Sometimes it has to do with food and why they're eating certain foods and why they have certain cravings. They start to identify and understand, these physical things and why they show up. And then one of the big aha moments for me in the inner work journey was your cells, the cells in your body, whether it's in your organs or muscles or wherever it's at, holds memories. And many times our body keeps score of trauma, and trauma can show up in certain beliefs. It could show up in outside trauma. And sometimes it's a combination of the two. And what I've found now, progressing through years of doing inner work in different layers personally, and then walking people through energy tools, many times the pains in our body there's an energetic component to it. And when you do inner work, meaning starting to bring conscious what is underneath the surface, what is unconscious or through your subconscious, you'll many times find, or all the time find, that there is an energetic component to why these certain ailments are showing up, whether it's physical challenges or life, what's going on in your life challenges. And so inner work is really that, like Peyton said, that umbrella overall term of all the different modalities on how to shift and adjust the energy. And, going through the energy tools, obviously we want to keep raising our vibration, right? Because if we're more in alignment to those higher vibrations, we're more of a match to that. Or if we're letting go of past beliefs that have kept us stuck or blocked or at a certain limitation, we're able to move to the next level. And so I love how, Corey, you're saying it's not for pansies. It's not easy work. Looking at your stuff is not easy. Confronting how we show up is not easy. Accepting that we played a role in what's showing up in our life is not easy. And not to go into a soapbox for too long, but I feel like anytime we're pointing the finger outward to any person, place, or thing, as far as as Corey's doing the little arrow pointing out, when you point your finger, there's always three pointing back. You're doing a disservice to yourself. You're actually keeping yourself in victim mode if you're blaming everyone else or everything else for your current situations. Yes, there's outside forces that we are interacting with, but your only control is you, your beliefs, how you're showing up, the actions you take. That's the only thing that we have control over. And so for me, inner work really is that introduction of my side of the street. How am I showing up? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about situations? What do I believe is possible or not possible? And my inner work, and your inner work, when you choose to do it, is really understanding, what are we working with and where can we go from here, and what way resonates with you on how to do that. And there's, again, so many different ways to do inner work. There's many things you can combine all at once. And the biggest recommendation I would recommend if you are on an inner work journey is to do some type of work that combines mind, body, spirit, whatever that looks like or is like for you, because our work shows up on all those layers all at once. And so if you want to start in one area, I think that's why I started out in nutrition and exercise. That was just something I knew was more of a preventative measure for some of these health issues that I saw around the world. And I wanted to be a piece in supporting that. But after understanding and doing health coaching, people know what to eat, what not to eat for the most part, right? Like not rocket science. Real whole foods. It's not a far stretch. But why is it so hard to, gravitate towards those things that feel good? Why do we gravitate towards other things that distract us, other things? Because there's something that we're trying to soothe in some way, shape, or form, or avoid having to deal with. So inner work is a lot of different layers, and you don't have to do it alone. That would be my next recommendation. So beyond hitting it at a mind, body, spirit level, find additional support, whether it's creating a support system around you or going through specific classes or groups or something where you have other people that are working towards a similar goal. It's you just give yourself a better chance of actually sticking with it in those hard times. Because when it gets hard, many of us want to quit, and many of us do. What can help you stay with it? Many times being in some type of group outside support is very, very helpful. So those are some things I would add for inner work. Ladies, do you have anything else come to mind when it comes to inner work? No? All right. It's such a broad term, but hopefully we gave you some insights and just different perspectives on what inner work could be, how you can go about doing it, and hopefully some of our recommendations were helpful. Be sure to like, share, comment if you have any additional suggestions around inner work that you found helpful, or just different avenues that other people can explore. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you have more interest in all the different tools that we have to offer. We'll see you next week for a brand new topic.